Catherine McGregor AM is one of Australia's sharpest strategic minds, a decorated military officer, war historian, and fearless public intellectual. With over 3 decades of operational service across the Army and Air Force, including command in Timor-Leste, she's advised chiefs of the Army, shaped national defence thinking, and earned the Order of Australia. Today, she brings the same clarity and courage to the national conversation as a writer and broadcaster. Incisive, uncompromising, and impossible to ignore. I fucking love women who are impossible to ignore. Catherine, welcome. Welcome to the Present Day Wise Woman. I was excited to get to chat to you today.
That's a lovely opportunity. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. So recently, I want to start with you wrote an article for the Saturday paper. It was published the week,
Yes.
14th, 15th of November, if anyone wants to track it down. My wife, Alice, and I, we devoured what you sent through to us. It showed it was a deep part.
Sure.
So I'm curious, how are you, and we were just chatting off camera before we came on, but I'm curious, how are you making peace nowadays? You spoke from your heart deeply around failure, regret, remorse, things like that in the afternoon of your life. You spoke about this time being the afternoon of your life. Let's start there.
Yeah, it's a phrase of Carl Jung, who was one of the sort of founders of modern psychiatry. And Jung had the theory that the aging process, while challenging, can lead to new depths of self-awareness. The inner life expands as the externals crumble. And I gather that's something of a theme of your podcast series, that there can be an afternoon of life. I think he had a phrase that what was true in the morning becomes a lie in the afternoon. And his view is that the ego shrinks and the personas we've adopted to survive, which entirely appropriate in what he calls life's mornings, but they do recede. The pursuit of material success, ego inflation, grandiosity, having the right job, knowing the right people, that gives way to if we're open to it, to an introspection, personal growth, the expansion of the soul in a non-religious sense, as the deep identity. And it's always spoken to me. I had a Jungian analysis for all. I was doing some therapy for some issues, and became a bit of a fan and read a bit of Jung. So that term, the afternoon of life, was derived from him. And how I cope, I've got some profound regrets. And that's the route to madness. I do hopefully make peace with them at some point. But I'm 70 at my next birthday. I'm still studying, which I first sat an exam for in 1984 and nearly completed in 1998, 99 and 2000. I was that close to finishing, and then went back into the military when the crises around Timor, 9/11 and the ultimate sort of operations abroad came, and I went back into the military and sort of interrupted what was a very promising career in another field.
Well, I live by the never say never and everything's possible. So I think you're going to be a fucking kick-ass lawyer in the afternoon of your life. I really do. The wisdom you've got at this age, you wouldn't have had 20 years ago, and it can only add to that profession.
That's entirely correct, I think, and it's been very obvious studying. I'm with a very young cohort, and they're great kids. I'm not one of the sort of old people shouting at clouds saying the country's going down the gurgler. They're good kids. They're highly proficient with technology. The one curse of being young, I suspect, is they do use AI far too much, and the law is an area where that's being cracked down on a little bit. But I see great enthusiasm amongst them, and they're good folks. And being able to mentor a little in that space is a wonderful opportunity. And after this year just completed, the lecturers thought my work was exemplary and sort of made the case for me to be able to tutor in the law school, which I really hope does come. It'd be a lovely way to impart overall life experience as well as my learning. So,
I love that. I think you'd be amazing at it. I'm curious, in the article you wrote about your disappointment of being too young to serve in Vietnam.
yeah,
So when you look back now, what really sits inside that disappointment, do you think?
it's you had to have lived through that era.
Hmm.
And I was a young kid from country Queensland. My father died. It's his anniversary on Sunday. In fact, he died a couple of days before Christmas. His funeral was Christmas Eve, 1964. He had been second AIF in New Guinea, was wounded, had malaria, had a tough war.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather was also in the first AIF. Both of them were AIF, first and second AIF. It was just my dad had another job. He was a civilian when he mustered out at the end of the war, but his identity was an Australian soldier. I can remember hearing all his stories. So I and my older brother, who's now deceased, had wanted to go to Duntroon, had not got entry, but I had the Duntroon recruiting magazines next to my bed before I could even read them and was looking at the pictures. I never entertained any other career other than going to the Royal Military College. I joined the school cadets at the age of 13 and ended up being an under officer, which was very common amongst my cohort at Duntroon. Right through Vietnam, as I came to maturity and ended school, I just assumed I would serve in Vietnam. Most of my classmates, when we got to Duntroon, felt chagrined that we had missed our chance to prove ourselves worthy of those who'd gone before. Now, I look back and realise that as a policy, Vietnam was the wrong call, and that's not to derogate the service of those who served there with distinction. I've got a lot of Vietnam veteran friends, but my class felt incredibly less than. We felt inferior because you've got to cast your mind back. The Commandant of the Royal Military College, General Hay, was a World War II veteran who'd also served in Vietnam. All our instructors were Vietnam. When I graduated, I was a lieutenant in an infantry battalion. About a third of my command, my rifle platoon, had been to Vietnam. My platoon sergeant had been twice. There were numerous veterans of the Korean War, including 2 Kapyong veterans in my rifle company.
Mm-hmm.
Two of my company commanders had been awarded the Military Cross in Vietnam. So to be a young lieutenant leading these soldiers and to look around in the mess at a happy hour on a Friday afternoon and be the only officers in the mess without campaign ribbons, it seared us. And there's a kind of window of the classes of 1972 to about 1981, all of whom felt that syndrome of not having gone to war. And ultimately, I ended up doing 3 overseas deployments and visiting other theatres as well, although not force assigned. And I'm one of only 5 or 6 of my graduating class who ended up going on operations, and I rounded out that circle. So what did it mean? It was a sense, I guess a psychiatrist might say I was trying to assert masculinity, trying to prove that I was okay. I think that's a superficially attractive paradigm, but I do believe basically I'd picked it up from my granddad and my father, that there was something noble about this, that this was what right looked like, and I never questioned it.
Yeah, I'm just a few years younger than you, and so very much was that teenager in the Vietnam War kind of days, and
Yeah.
just had to join the Australian Army. And I couldn't join till I joined when I was 17. The day I
Yeah.
turned 17, I went and got the form, came home, and I said to my parents, sign it or I'm going to sign it in a year's time. Dad refused to, because I have no family history of military, and they just couldn't understand it. And it was like, Mum knew I was serious. And so, yeah, off I went
Yes.
to the 17-year-old. I was the youngest in my rookies. Yeah,
That
but
was
it
at
was
George's Heights. I
George's
think, was it?
Heights. Yeah, Mossman. Yeah,
Beautiful
back in
base.
those days. And it was like the same. It was that Vietnam War, which was well over by 79. However, that need to serve was
Yeah,
huge. Yeah.
yeah.
You wrote in the article about the young men of the Civil War. Just to go
Oh, yeah, yeah,
so with you as a young soldier, wishing you'd kind of served and that kind of parallel,
yeah.
was there, I think sometimes I romance what I thought the army was going to be from what I saw in things. Was there anything like
I
that
think
for you? Or do you think we all do that?
I think we all do.
Mm,
I don't think anyone that I've known, and I still hold my commission, and I'm still serving kind of on an age extension, and that means that my service commenced in 1974, and I don't think I've ever met anyone in our army, and I served a lot with the US Army as well over the years. I've never met anyone who didn't have that romantic vision of what the profession of arms was about. I've never met anyone who said they were signing up to go and kill people that they'd never met. I think only a sociopath would think that, and the psychiatric vetting is pretty rigorous, as you know.
mm,
Uh, and the Civil War, as a kid, I got fixated on it, and I'd been very ill one year, and I couldn't go to school. I got very bad measles, then followed by pneumonia, and nearly died. There was a show on during my childhood called The Grey Ghost, and I was a bit taken by this. And then I started, because I was at home a lot, I started looking at quite adult books and encyclopedias, and I read a lot about the campaigns of the Punic Wars, Hannibal and the Roman Empire, and I got a bit interested in the American Civil War as well. And indeed, it became the main area of scholarship that interested me. We studied it compulsorily at Duntroon. The
mm.
campaigns of Napoleon and the operations of the American Civil War were very much part of the curriculum. And I wrote my honours dissertation on the generalship of Robert E. Lee. And I then did an MPhil at Oxford later on, where I expanded on that. Did a year at Oxford at All Souls, where I studied the operations and had this extraordinary collection of primary documents from that era. So it was a lifelong interest in the operations of the American Civil War. And there's a film that would be a bit obscure for most of your audience, I suspect. There's a film that Ted Turner bankrolled called Gettysburg, which is this kind of epic. It's 4 hours long. And it's the most historically accurate war film I've ever seen, in that he cast actors who bore striking resemblances to the characters. Martin Sheen as Robert E. Lee was just staggering with the southern accent, absolute perfection. Jeff Chamberlain played Jeffrey Bridges played Lawrence Joshua Chamberlain. And it was a powerful film, and they recreated the charge of Pickett's division on the third day at Gettysburg recreated a Confederate division. They had 15,000 extras lined up for the shot. And in that era, made in 1992 or 3, panoramic shots, which would be used, they'd use drone cameras now, whatever they were using, perhaps balloons. I'd never seen anything like it, because having read every bit of historiography on Gettysburg and Lee, I was just staggered at the precision in the work. And it's a challenging watch, but I've watched a few times since. Got the most beautiful musical score too. And I always weep at that moment when Pickett's charge crests the ridge on the way across the cornfield.
I'm going to have to track that down. Thank you. Gettysburg.
I think you might enjoy it. Yeah, Ted Turner film.
Yep.
Yeah, wait for a cold, rainy day, I suspect, because it's a long film, but
They're in the surf,
it's
not
powerful. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when you're not in the surf.
Catherine, you wrote once about being a young boy, and if you're open to it, how did your transition shape your sense of belonging? Like, in the military, while we're on that military thread, as well as just within yourself?
Yeah. Look, it's a huge thing. You rupture the thread of existence, you know. Just a couple of side observations. Jen, thank you for inviting me to come on this podcast dedicated to wise women. The queer community have mixed views on me, because I grew up in an era where the term transsexual was current. I knew Carlotta, I knew a lot of those girls from Lay Girls and elsewhere. They were the only models of what trans looked like to me.
Yeah.
And I went through the gatekeeper model where you had to be diagnosed, there were a lot of guardrails in place. And so I've never made an explicit claim to be a woman. I don't like being misgendered. I don't like being dead-named. I don't like being abused and called him and he, which the gender-critical feminist movement now pride themselves on this. You know, it is gaslighting for you to have me on a woman's podcast. So I've not lightly done these things. Even in the era transition, I'd go to a gender-neutral bathroom if there's one available, because I don't want a confrontation.
Yeah.
But you say, how did I cope with it? And again, just to rebut one gender-critical article that really annoys me, we're all running this line that we're all autogynephiles, in that we're sexually aroused by female clothing. It's a form of transvestism. We're all deviants. We're all addicted to internet porn. Well, okay. I started dressing in my mother's clothes when there was a black and white Motorola television in the living room. There was no internet. I didn't have a phone or a computer until I was 50, a personal device. You know, this nonsense. And yet this tension was there all along.
Yeah.
And it really disturbed me. You know, I'm from a conservative town, a very Catholic family. I tried to get on with my life, and at numerous times sought psychiatric help for the distress I was in. And the final time, it just wouldn't go away. Now, transitioning in the army, it turned out paradoxically and surprising perhaps to some of your listeners, was actually the safest place in the world to transition, in that it wasn't the army that treated you so badly.
It's huge.
It had changed.
Yeah.
It had got quite a journey, and I was told that I was valuable. And the analogy I use, the thing I love about the army and choke up about sometimes still, I knew a lot of the long tan gunners, and I wrote a long story about the long tan gunners who spent 50 years tracking down one of their own who had been mistakenly recorded as killed in action the night before the battle during the probing attack by the NVA.
Yeah.
He was in a repat hospital. They found him in 2000 and reunited him with his daughter. Now those guys, among them was a First Nations man called John Burns, Uncle John, who's a dear friend, grew up not far from you in Holland Park. They found Phil Norris, and I wrote the piece, it was called Saving Gunner Norris, which is like Private Ryan.
So you caught up. So that was just up the road from me in Brizzy.
Yeah, he was in Holland Park, and he wasn't stolen generations. As far as he can determine, his mum gave him away. She was very young. Never met his mum and dad. He doesn't know who they are. He was adopted or fostered by a British woman, and they very humble origin. She was a single mum as well. She just looked after John. And he joined the army as soon as he could, and he ended up 2 battles. It's a beautiful story, and he's a great human. I'll send you a photo of him.
Yeah, tough.
He ended up being a lifer. He stayed 35 years. And on the afternoon of the Danger Close mission, he was on the gun line firing rapidly into the rubber plantation.
Yeah.
And he said it was the first time he'd ever felt like an Australian, because he looked back at the height of the battle, monsoon rain pouring, and he saw the guys coming out of the RAP, some of them holding drips, others on crutches to break open the spare ammunition so they didn't have to interrupt the Danger Close mission into the rubber. And it just, when he told me, I cried.
Yeah.
And he said, and I said, that's the army that I love. Yeah. And I said, did you ever feel you were discriminated against? And he said, no, I always thought we had green skin.
Fucking love it. I love that.
Yeah. And that's kind of what happened to me, in that I notified the chain of command and offered my resignation, and they said, under no circumstances, go. And I stayed, and I'm still there. And I was abused appallingly by one fanatic who happened to be serving, and he was discharged over it, and he fought it all the way to the High Court. Brutal sledging and hate speech, basically. Got years of it. His posts are still up. I never got a takedown order against that individual. But the army institutionally supported me, and I don't know too many places where I would have experienced the same degree of support. It was powerful.
It's a very different army to my experience, except, however, I still encourage people to join the army. It didn't go to plan. It gave me my purpose for life, that I'd never hide my life, and I would fight for LGBT rights and women's rights. And so it was great in the end, but at the time I was fucking heartbroken. So when I first learned of you, and I was like, no fucking way, like, thank you. That was worth my pain in my days. It really was, to see you be able to transition.
And I can only guess at how heartbroken you were, Jen, because I had classmates just the same thing. I saw friends of mine failed an exam or got discharged medically, or just something happened.
Yeah.
And it got them. I went to a 40th anniversary of our graduation, and there were guys there who'd left after their second year, but some part of them still belonged to that. So I get the connection you felt.
Yeah. And, I've been out for 43 years, and yet I found my first to 79, our rookies course, and we have a reunion every year, and it's like, it doesn't leave your blood. It doesn't.
And it doesn't. Yeah. Yeah,
it's interesting.
I had my XO when I was on my second tour in Timor. Awesome guy, David Tilt. He was a light infantry guy, came from the ranks through Portsea. And Tilty said a great thing to me. We're out on Los Palos, far out in the east of Timor-Leste, CO, the training team. And he said, we leave the army, but it never leaves us. There's some truth in that.
Yeah, I 1,000,000% agree. So you've been a mad cricketer.
Yeah.
Passionate, loving it. And you're lefty, you're left-handed.
Yes,
you're
left-handed.
Kind of role model cricket person, Cowper.
Yeah, Bob Cowper, RM.
Tell us about your cricket journey, because that's been like great highs. However, I know since the last few years it's been a low as well. Having navigated all that.
Yeah, look, it was, that's the thing that devastated me about being dumped as a commentator, was that the only fixture of my old life that had survived this kind of thread running through my life was cricket. and I'd started playing incredibly young, and I still have the cricket bat that my mum and dad had ordered for me that last Christmas. It was under the tree. He was gone.
Wow.
And Mum told me subsequently he was asking her in his final couple of days, has that imported cricket, you got a cricket bat made of Sarawak willow or something? Because he said, this kid's got talent, got me a grown-up cricket bat rather than the kids' sets. It was under the tree. He was gone, but the bat was there, and I've still got it. And I was precociously talented. I was picked in grade 4 at an all-boys school when the entire team was made up of grade 6 and 7 kids. And I went down to the nets, and the brother just went, "We're picking you." I was just, and I learnt. My dear dad had taught me to bowl overarm. Kids used to chuck, until they were well into primary school, secondary school. I was bowling with a perfect action. I was a pretty decent cricketer. So it was all part of my life right through, and I loved it, and it survived transition. In fact, the summer that the dysphoria really came back, I was writing a book called Indian Summer, which I was covering the Indian tour of Australia, and it was the summer was just awful. I was suicidal, I was dysphoric, I couldn't sleep, I was being heavily medicated, and I somehow managed to get the book out. And cricket has just been such a part of my life. So what happened was when it ended arbitrarily, it had a devastating impact on me, frankly. And I still have never been told why I wasn't good enough by the ABC. In fact, must be the only diversity hire ever fired by the ABC, I suspect. Yeah, it left me, and it's sad because even with an Ashes summer happening now, and I know a lot of players on both teams, not some of the newer debutants I don't know because I've literally stopped watching it. It's just too painful. Haven't set foot in the ground since 2018. I hope one day I can go back, but it's it's probably a bit the way you feel about the army. I suspect in that wrench and going, what have I done to deserve this? Yeah. It gutted me. But Kaupa was my first hero. I just remember I was the product of a Catholic education system that tried to make us right-handed, even though I was left-hand dominant from whenever.
Yep. And
my darling mum was a trained teacher. She'd undergone tertiary education in an era when women just weren't going into higher education, and she finished her boarding school and went on to the Teachers College and ended up in Charleville in Western Queensland, where she met my dad, who was the son of the mayor of Charleville. Fell in love and they got married. And Mum went back to do some casual teaching after Dad died. And I can still remember her being furious and well ahead of her time. She would have been a wise woman.
She would have been a crone, a wise woman. Bloody oath.
Chain smoking and hearing me saying, they're making me right-handed. She went up and fronted them and said, "You will not do this to my child." And so I was able to find it because it was causing psychiatric symptoms. I was walking in my sleep. I started bedwetting, at the age of 5, talking in the sleep, really horrible stuff. And Mum just said, "This is not going to happen." And so I gravitated to whenever I saw a left-hander excelling, I was mesmerised. And I just remember thinking Kaups was, or Wallaby as he was nicknamed, Wal, was just, he got 307 at the MCG in the first full summer after my father's death. And I was fixated on Bob Kaupa, but I was completely mesmerised by the Ashes. And it was the first summer, I believe, where the ABC started to broadcast in the afternoon. So they'd do the tea session, the Teal Stump session on the old black and white telly. Norman May, I think, might have been commentating. I think McGilvray certainly on radio still. And I was just, oh my God, where's this been all my life? And when Kaupa who I absolutely adored, was dropped from the team. I was gutted by that. And then he rebounded and came back for the deciding test and got 307. And I was just absolutely obsessed with him. I had a little card from a bubblegum pack with Bob Cowper on it. And great gift later in life, I met the man who bowled him in that Melbourne test, a guy called Barry Knight. And I don't know whether you believe in synchronicity or
totally.
have any metaphysical.
All energy.
Well, and Jung synchronicity, would you believe I had literally penned that article about Cowper? Barry Knight died the week that it appeared. And he bowled Cowper at the MCG. And he met Cowper, they used to meet over beers, and Cowper never let it go. He's saying, "You prick, I fucking I wanted to overtake fucking Bradman." And they all hated Bradman, as did Ian Chappell, and Chappell has been a great mate and ally over the years. And I spoke to him about Cowps and the article. We had a long reminisce. And he just said, you've got to understand how deeply wounded Bob was by being dropped by Bradman. He detested him. And when he got within spitting distance, he thought, I'm going to break Bradman's bloody record of 334. And at 307, and Barry Knight had me in stitches. We were all around Jimmy Maxwell's bed in the Sydney hospital after Maxie had his stroke. And I've walked in, there's Barry Knight. And I've gone up and we're having this great natter. I said, Bob Cowper was my hero. I don't know whether I just about used lethal force on you. And he was laughing. He said, mate, I was trying to get him over the fucking line. He said, did you ever see the ball that bowled him? And I said, I don't believe I ever did. He said, go and find it. He said, I was bowling.
He was trying to help him bowl hit a six.
Yeah. He said, it's the worst ball I ever got a wicket with. It rolled along the ground and the bails fell forward. It was going so slow. He said, I don't know how he missed it. So we were in splits laughing about that.
Love it.
And so that was the story of the fixation with Robert Maskew Cowper. And funny enough, Jen, too, the other lovely thing, I never got to meet Cowper. I was very sad about that. He'd gone down to Merimbula. But I got a lovely message in my Insta message box from the man who had designed Bob's house down at Merimbula, where he'd gone and retired and was playing golf all the time. He used to play, this fellow told me a great story, that he designed the house, used to go there for dinner with Cowps, and he said the surreal experience was going to Merimbula Golf Club and playing golf with Richie Benno and R.M. Cowper. And he said it just was, because this guy clearly was a pretty decent golfer, but he said you're in another league when you're going with these hand-eye players like those two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What piece of advice do you think Cowper would give you today in the afternoon of your life? If you could talk to Cowper today, what would you ask? And what piece of advice would Cowper give you?
Well, interesting, I guess. I suspect that what he with hindsight, he would have said, he was gutted at being dropped after the Sydney test in 1965-6.
Yep.
And he felt it was a bit personal too, I think, in that, he was very aggrieved at the decision, and he wasn't the worst player in that test match either. Brian Booth captained Australia because Simpson was unwell, I think, with shingles or smallpox, the captain. And Booth was a lovely man. I got to know Boothie very, very well in later life, Brian Booth, and he died a couple of years ago. Brian was dropped, and Bradman wrote him a handwritten note saying, it's broken my heart to drop you as captain. It was Brian's last test. I think Cowper would say that probably the darkness is deepest before the dawn, because I suspect Bob thought he would be out for the series, and yet he ended up back in Melbourne and scored 300. So I guess he'd be inclined to say, don't give up, endure, come back from the disappointment. I suspect that would have been a lesson he could preach with authority, because he did. He rebounded and then went on to South Africa and then England in 68. He retired prematurely. He only played 27, 29 tests around from memory, Cowps. Ian Chappell told me he thought Cowps would have been captain of Australia. He was just an exemplary guy. He really had the X factor. But he seared the board of control, and anyone retiring after the Ashes tour in '68 was entitled to speak. They'd get up and speak to the team dinner. Cowper got up and ripped into the Australian Cricket Board and Bradman for not paying the players correctly.
Oh.
And Chappell, he said, I reckon World Series cricket was born that night.
Yeah.
He said, because it really resonated with me. And he thought, yeah, we're getting exploited here. And he said, Cowper just said, fuck it, I'm out of here. I'm not playing anymore. They can get fucked. I'm going to go and make some money. And Ian stayed on, but he greatly admired Bob Cowper and sort of looked up to him. And so I think that probably was a formative influence as well. So, yeah, Bob, I think, probably, and people who knew him did say he was incredibly whip smart, had a high intellect. So I guess he would have, his lesson would be don't stay down. When you fall, don't stay down, I guess.
Love it. What if you could author a book at the moment, what would it be and why?
Oh, wow. You know, Jen, I've had terrible writing about my own life. And in that piece, I reflected on the fact that I think I've been blessed with certain talents as a writer. I've written a lot in another voice. I've written for other people. I've written hundreds of speeches for politicians, senior leaders in the military. But I have never been able to write an account of my life. And I really, I got offered a very substantial advance by Louise Adler at MUP. I gave the advance back. I got writing block, couldn't do it. I did the same with a terrific fellow, Tom Gilliard, who tells me he's still interested in a book from me. I would, I don't want to write the standard I was born, I grew up, I transitioned.
Sure.
I need someone who's willing to let me perhaps do a series of essays about chapters in my life and just let it flow. And in fact, if I can digress a bit, I started again, that quote from Faulkner that I used in the article, I wrote the foreword to what I thought might be a memoir, and I've stalled yet again. So maybe I just haven't got a memoir in me, but I would like to write something and leave it behind. And my moment that Faulkner wrote about in Intruder in the Dust, that powerful quote, and again, caveat this very heavily. Some of your listeners might be offended to think that my obsession with militaria was studying the military operations of the Civil War. There's controversy about Robert E. Lee. His statues have been torn down during the Black Lives Matter protests and so on. Although Lee never owned slaves, as I'm absolutely pretty confident that's correct. Arlington Cemetery is built on Lee's family home, the beautiful homestead overlooking the rolling hills of Arlington in Washington is the Lee family estate. He was an incredibly chivalrous man, and one doesn't need to have any truck with slavery or racism to have been interested in the military operations of the American Civil War. We were compelled to do it because it was one of the first wars fought in the Industrial Revolution era. Use of railroads, graphic communication, aerial observation by balloons. There are lessons that we can learn even down to today. But coming back to it, Faulkner wrote of the symbolism of the immense sort of carnage at Gettysburg. There were 58,000 American casualties in 3 days at Gettysburg. Simultaneously in the Western Theatre, Ulysses S. Grant, who went on to be the President of the United States, captured Vicksburg, so the Confederacy was rent asunder by two substantial defeats. Those people of that era, the beautiful language. Grant sent a telegram to Lincoln at the fall of Gettysburg. The Mississippi now flows unvexed to the sea.
It was a different
Faulkner wrote Gettysburg.
Yeah.
That moment just before Pickett's division charged and was slaughtered, 13,000 marching across an open field into the mouth of direct fire artillery. And Faulkner wrote, becomes a moment in the life of every southern boy who attains the age of 14 years. Not just once, but whenever he wishes it so, when it's not yet 2 o'clock on a July afternoon in a Pennsylvania cornfield. And it doesn't have to begin. And I remember...
I got goosebumps.
That's what it did to me. I've still got Intruder in the Dust on my shelves by William Faulkner, with whom I share a common thing of he was a chronic alcoholic. He died of alcoholism. And maybe part of my... I've been sober for 35 and a half years, and I don't drink. Maybe I would have had more books behind me and died young. I don't know. But that call, which I studied in compulsory, all the American novel, Great Gatsby, and that one, Intruder in the Dust. I remember thinking, my God, where did that come from, that quote? I remember I flew into Ballabo Fort, staggering experience. I can tell you the day. It was the 13th of March, 2002. And we've come in through, the monsoon's about to burst, and I'm on the bird with General Cosgrove visiting forward deployed elements. Ballabo Fort is overlooking the Timor Sea, and literally the house where the Ballabo Five were massacred is still there. I don't know whether it's still there now, but it was there in 2002. The graffiti on the wall, exactly as it was the day those journalists were killed by TNI. And we've come in, and the old fort constructed in the 16th century with moss on the walls. The 2nd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment, 2RR, headquartered there. The CO's Angus Campbell, who many of your listeners will know, went on to be CDF. Cosgrove, myself, personal security detail of gunslingers, his MA, and the incoming Sector West commander, the PKF commander, Peacekeeping Force commander, a guy called Ian Gordon, who remains a dear mate, 2-star general. We fly in and we go into Angus Campbell's O group for the night, and I'm breathtaken at the beauty. We're literally looking at an observation post out into the Timor Sea. The Motayan Bridge is down sort of number of mils off to the right front, but visible, naked eye and binos, you could see it. And looking out, looking at ambush patrol, putting an ambush patrol in that re-entrant every night. And we had the O group, and I went out, and I'm looking out. The monsoon has bucketed down, and if you've been in a monsoonal climate, you almost can't see 10 metres when the rain's at its peak. Timor's very much like that.
Yeah.
I walked out. The rain lifted because it falls rapidly and intensely, and then it clears. And I've walked out, and there is a perfectly arched rainbow over the Timor Sea and this beautiful light. I remember thinking, I'm never going to deploy as an Australian soldier in operations overseas. I kind of made peace with that. I would never wear medals on my chest like the soldiers I admired. And here I am finally, 46 years of age, looking out at the Timor Sea, carrying a weapon in a foreign country. And that was it was a moment, I can still remember that moment with more clarity than many other moments. And when I started the draft memoir, I started with Faulkner's quote, and I said, for this Australian soldier, my Gettysburg moment was that moment, looking out into the tent and wow, I can't believe I'm getting paid to fucking do this. This is insane. I just thought, money can't buy this. It's indescribable, that feeling of wow, this is a serious business. It's life and death. I'm amongst people I trust, that I admire. The purpose is actually potentially deadly, but wow, I know it was humbling and exhilarating at the same time.
Mm.
Yeah, that made sense.
Yeah, no, I get that in a big way. It's huge. What's your biggest dream right now?
Dream?
Yeah.
Well, I think I would like to write some. I think there is a book left to be written.
Yeah.
I need to show some self-discipline and do that. I've been invited to
Writing's
join.
interesting.
Sound like a knowing laugh. That sound like someone who knows what I'm
I've
talking
written
about.
16 books. It's a fucking journey.
Go you, go you.
It's huge. It's huge.
If I can get number 4 up, I'll be really happy. Would you believe Jason, I wrote my first book when I was 28. Would you believe?
There you go.
And crickets for years after. I wrote a book about a football player. And it was the first. It was a really pioneering book in a way because University of Queensland Press, which hitherto had been purely academic books, said it was based in Queensland. It was written about a Queensland hero of that era, Paul McLean, the great rugby fly half. And I used his career to analyse why Queenslanders are different, why there's this kind of projection on the sporting heroes because we were kind of a laggard state, butt of everyone's jokes. You kind of get why everyone loves Origin and gets Origin is life and death for Queenslanders. It's just a game for other states. But so I wrote that book about McLean, and UQP said, we're thinking of getting into the sports genre. If yours works, we're going with Greg Chappell and Wally Lewis. And so it's a great honour. But
cool.
I have one book since, and I need to write another book. The dream left now in terms of there's a simple thing. I'd like to live and be healthy till I'm at least 80. I'm going on 70. I feel like I've only woken up quite late. I would like more time.
Yep.
In the afternoon of life, I realise how finite and fragile it is. And as far as I know, I'm in reasonable health. I hope I've got some longevity because there are things that I want to explore.
Yeah.
But I'd like the last thing career-wise, and I guess it constitutes a dream, is I was offered a chance to go to the bar in Sydney as a barrister over 40 years ago. And a man on 4th floor Wentworth Chambers, a really good floor, prestigious floor, whom I used to brief a lot when I was a young articled clerk at a big Labor industrial firm called McClellan's, no longer exists, but we used to do all the Labor Party trade union work. And this guy, he's still at the bar, and he told me, in fact, wow, Jen, if we're talking woo-woo and synchronicity and energy.
Energy is everything. Yeah, go on.
1 year ago to the day, 18 December, I caught up to have lunch with him, and he invited me to come to the bar when I finish my law degree, which is in the coming year, hopefully. I would like to do it. It's unfinished business. I'd like to do it.
Well, I believe, there are no coincidences in life. So the synchronicity you will do that.
Yeah, hope so.
More wisdom like you were meant to have than 20 years ago. It's all perfect. We just have to trust the journey, I think.
I do think that's right. I do think that's right.
Yeah.
There's a lovely quote from Oliver Wendell Holmes, and he lived to be he was he was an associate justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. He was wounded during the American Civil War, born in 1841, intellectual, lucky to survive the war. I think he was wounded at Antietam, the bloodiest single day of the war.
Mm-hmm.
Eminent jurist, he wrote a beautiful quote: as life is action and passion, it behoves us to share the passion and action of our time at peril of being judged not to have lived it all.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What have we not talked about yet that you want to say? Come on, this is a soapbox moment. What would you love to share with the world?
Well, I think one thing I'd like to say, and I guess, Jen, as I said, it's an honour you've bestowed on me, inviting me to come on to a women's podcast. And as I said, I've hoped I haven't barged down doors to female spaces. But I can see the backlash against trans people in Australia now is becoming nasty, virulent. It's being absolutely fuelled by the Murdoch press, where I worked, I might add, and I suspect it has now changed with the election of Trump. But when I worked for those organisations, their diversity and inclusion training was world's best practice. And despite all their sort of commentators ranting against the ADF being woke, I can tell you that the DEI training at News Limited was more progressive than it was in the ADF. In that, and now I'm talking 5 years back and longer, but if you misgendered someone or used the wrong pronouns after they had inquired, you could be dismissed. And that's from Sky News and elsewhere, where they're all now ranting, calling people like me him and he, and saying that it's gaslighting to refer to me as she, and carrying on. So they've got a crusade going, and it's hurtful.
Yeah.
And it's harming people. And so a wonderful young CEO at the Inner City Legal Centre, Katie Green, shout out to her, has given me an opportunity to do some pro bono work, which is mandatory both for my degree and also for professional legal training on the way to admission. I'm going to do some internship in the ICLC next year, and there's a lot of support offered by the ICLC to the trans community, to the broader queer community. There's also some veterans outreach, because around King's Cross, where the headquarters is, a pretty significant population of homeless veterans. Yeah. And there's some work in the asylum seeker refugee space as well. So I guess that's beckoning me now, and it's a wonderful opportunity, and it's where whatever people think they know about my views, I can be, hopefully, given that I've got some profile and I've got some networks on both sides of the political aisle, I'd like to think that I can put myself between vulnerable trans people and the mongrels who are kicking us to death at the moment. And I'm pretty resilient. I've had plenty of abuse directly and indirectly. But there are people who are struggling and are much more vulnerable. So for you to invite me to this, I don't lightly do it. As I said, I choose gender-neutral bathrooms if there's one available. When I'm asked to do female-only events, I try to make sure that I am not causing offence to, if people do feel strongly that I am essentially male intruding on a female space. I don't go where I'm not welcome. So thank you for the welcome.
Well, the courage it took for me just to come out as a dyke was huge. And I didn't speak to my folks for 25 years.
Oh, wow.
Huge. And yet nowadays, the black sheep of the family is the one they call on. Really interesting. Yeah. So I know the courage it took for me to do that. The courage for you to transition is fucking mental. And I have utmost respect for anyone who will live true to themselves, because I know how much the abuse I got when I was younger and everything, and I get hassled walking into the women's toilets still today, relentlessly.
It's still happening. And I've noticed
I'm questioned all the time for walking into a woman's toilet. Yeah. And it's like, but that's why it was so important for me to have you on here. It wasn't a question.
Wow.
It wasn't a question.
Well, it's certainly happening in the UK after that court decision. I'm seeing it in my feed now. A lot of out proud dykes are going to female bathrooms and being questioned.
Well, I've still got, I've got girlfriends here, out, dykey girls.
Wow.
I've been out for 40 years, and I'm just confidently me. And as an older dyke now, I'm really like, I care even more, and like, don't, just fucking don't, which is what I just did my whole TED talk about, last month, just giving old women their voice, whether they're gay, straight, trans, fucking anything. I don't care. We have a right.
Yeah.
So thank you for agreeing to come on. I knew you wouldn't take it lightly. And I know there could be some people on this listening that are challenged.
Yeah.
And more importantly, I ask them just to open their mind, because we're just people doing the best of life as we can day to day. And I've never hidden being gay since I was outed in the army, because I thought the only way I can live safe is to be visible. And I know the courage it takes. So I have utmost respect for you, Catherine. I really do.
Well, thanks, Jim, and very much reciprocated, I can assure you.
Yeah.
We need
to make this world safe for everybody. Fuck the fuckers. It's got so fucked up at the moment this year. I started this podcast because I lost hope for women at the start of this year. With Trump turning everything back so much, I said to Alice, I don't want to live in this world anymore. And she said, we have to.
It's off the chart.
It is. And so this is part of my fight. I'm going to make women's voices bigger and louder.
Good on you.
Yeah, wisdom to the world. So thank you for being part of that conversation.
Absolute honour. And bless you and Alice. I reconciled with family before your mum died. You were able to.
Yeah, we did.
25.
Yeah, it was huge. So I've been out 40 odd years. I had a good relationship with mum, and I've got a good relationship, better relationship with my dad and mum than any of my siblings had. And yet I was the outcast for decades. It's interesting, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And it's
okay. I just don't tone my life down for anyone.
Good on you.
Including family. Doesn't no good for me. What brings you joy nowadays, Catherine? That's Alice's question. She said, ask her this. I want to know.
What brings me joy?
What brings you
dog called Joy.
Oh, your dog is called Joy. Oh my God.
She is gorgeous. I can look in that little set of eyes and melt and cry. Music, poetry. It's funny. My feed knows me well. It just throws up stuff that I like. So the music the theme from the Shawshank Redemption was playing, and it just tears welled up.
Yeah.
So was Red when Morgan Freeman finds the letter from Tim Hutton. That makes music can make me cry and fill me with joy. There's a good film like Shawshank Redemption.
Classic.
I've got good friends. During the lockdowns, I started having this sort of human bubble thing of just a couple of people started coming with their little dogs during the lockdowns. It's gone organically, and now every Sunday night we sort of have either soup in the winter or pizzas in summer, and it's very heartful and real, and people tell the real truth and connection. I've a few times, this was a creature of lockdowns to keep it going. They go, no way, we love this. That's just a beautiful experience. I do. Music and poetry do it for me, and it's something about language. Maybe it's no coincidence I ended up writing speeches, because I hear language like music, Great quote from Shakespeare. I just go, you said goosebumps. King Harry, I come to know of thee, whether for thy ransom thou will now compound, or face thy most assured overthrow. Henry V, anyone who's ever been a soldier. Once more under the breach, dear friends, once more we'll close the wall up with our English dead. That's in Crispin's face, but it's insane. Language and music, it just fills me with joy. And little dogs, I just adore them. I walk around my neighbourhood now cuddling people's dogs, and the mad dog lady of King Earth.
Love it. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self, as the wise woman you are today, what piece of advice would you give?
Oh, wow. Always bat first in Adelaide. And
Best is on in Adelaide today.
I say, I think, and it's a hard thing to hear, and I suspect with your work and passions, it's hard you're probably a perfectionist and an overachiever. No? Well,
I was a perfectionist. I burned out. I don't do the perfection anymore. Overachiever, sure. Passionate.
Totally hear you.
Don't do the perfection anymore.
Yeah. And I think what I'd say is I would just say your best is good enough.
Yeah.
Your best is good enough. You are absolutely okay no matter what anyone else thinks. And that's not your own bad behaviour, but your intrinsic worth is you're okay. And I doubted that and I still doubt it from time to time.
Catherine, it's been such a pleasure. How can people follow you? I will put links below, but what's the best place for people to follow you and reach out now?
I've got a LinkedIn profile.
So LinkedIn's your favourite?
Yeah, I think we're LinkedIn, and I've got a Facebook page and an Insta page. They can find me as Catherine McGregor.
All right. I will put below wherever you're listening to this, or if you're watching it on YouTube, doesn't matter where you are, I will put Catherine's links below. Easy. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Hey, Merry Christmas.
For your heart. Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. And I look forward to catching up with you for real in the future.
See you in 2026.
Deal.
Take care.
You too. See ya.
See you, Jen.